Joining us now on the Sunrise Morning Show is Sarah Bassil. She's Director of Advocacy for In Defense of Christians. Sarah, welcome back.
Good morning, Annie. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you in advance for keeping us aware and making this story at the forefront of our minds, because it does not get much publicity, but the genocide taking place against Christians in Nigeria continues. Can you give us some of the latest news on this front?
Sure. So I like to start with just talking generally about the situation. Like you said, there's an unrecognized genocide of Christians in Nigeria, and the numbers are incredibly worrisome. Open Doors ranks Nigeria as the 9th worst place to live as a Christian in the world. And to give you some context, it's more, it's not just political violence, but it's violence and physical violence from a number of different terrorist organizations, including Boko Haram, Fulani militias, and several offshoots of the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. So it's not just one force, it's many different forces that that Christian communities are facing. And, they constitute Christians. They constitute about 50% of the population. So it's incredibly crazy that this number of people are in the country that are Christian but face this much violence. And so those are just some numbers about what's happening. But recently, and this is almost every day happens, but so little news coverage, we recently learned that 60 worshipers of a Baptist church were kidnapped about 2 weeks ago during a church service. And it came out about 2 days ago that gunmen killed 2 of the worshipers and are threatening with other worshipers, to other Christians that were abducted. And that's just one example of what's happening on a daily basis in the country. And so we just like to bring attention to this issue and ask that your listeners pray, but most importantly to help bring attention to the fact that this is a genocide that's not being talked about.
Yeah, for those who haven't really been following this situation in Nigeria, Sarah, I mean, what is the background? How did this come about?
Sure. Well, as you know, Nigeria's government flips hands between the Christian population and the Muslim population during presidential elections. But this particular violence has been going on for decades. And so since maybe the late 80s, early 90s, there's been a lot of tensions and a lot of regional tensions as well that reflect back in Nigeria. And so every couple of years, there's a new reason for the violence to continue. But this particular surge in the violence really occurred in 2006, 2007, as Al-Qaeda offshoots started, increasing their terrorist activities. When Boko Haram started in 2013, 2014, being active in being more violent in the Christian areas, it became, an increasing worrisome situation. And since then, it's just been increasing with the Nigerian government not only not advocating for the Christian communities, but also being just standing idly by and not doing anything, which is, some can argue, is doing almost the same thing as participating in the violence.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of a brief background, but we know that Fulani herdsmen and the militias are active in the government. The current president, Muhammadu Buhari, is Fulani, and he has a lot of ties to that community. And, when he watches his community continue violently persecuting the Christian Nigerians, he does close to nothing, and it's just as bad. So that's a brief background.
Is he looking the other way? I mean, it just baffles me sometimes when I look at governments like like in Nigeria, for instance, or now in Afghanistan, for instance, where they're just looking the other way and not stopping the extremism.
It's not even only looking the other way. When you are a government leader and half of your population is facing a genocide, looking the other way is the equivalent of actively participating in the persecution. Christians, like I said, 50% of the population, but they're murdered for their faith more than any country in the world. So in countries like Egypt, they're maybe like legally persecuted. In Afghanistan, we don't know exactly what's happening in terms of like the underground numbers and things like that. But in Nigeria, the numbers are incredibly worrisome. We know that Boko Haram has killed more people in Nigeria than the Islamic State killed in Iraq and Syria combined. So those are, to give you some numbers, it's nearly 5,000-6,000 in the past couple of years of Christians dying. And so that comes out to be several Christian Nigerians dying on a daily basis. And the government has done close to nothing, standing idly by, turning its head around. And then the international community is also not paying attention because they're so desensitized to the violence in Nigeria, and that combination has created a genocide with very alarming numbers. And we continue to bring attention to it, but we can't be the only people talking about it. So it's very alarming.
Yeah. What about the international community here, Sarah? I mean, is there anyone speaking out on behalf of Christians in Nigeria? Is there anyone trying to put pressure on the Nigerian government to do something about this?
Sure. So In Defense of Christians has obviously been a leader in this fight, but the issue with it is that a lot of the information just doesn't get out when it happens. Like the armed bandits that I was referring to in the beginning of the show, that was from nearly 2 weeks ago, but we're hearing about it now. So that's one of the issues that's stopping people. There's no on-the-ground information that's reliable, and that's causing some issues. But in terms of organizations, it's very limited attention because it's not, an issue that a lot of people know about. So Defense of Christians has been advocating for the State Department to recognize this as genocide, or for Congress to recognize it as a genocide, or President Biden to recognize it as genocide, because that unlocks a lot of aid through the State Department and different means in the United States government so that these persecuted communities can get help. It's the same concept that we worked on during our advocacy for Christian genocide of Iraqis. And so it's the same concept that can be applied here, but it's far more violent, and it's very alarming.
Very alarming. Go to indefenseofchristians.org to learn more about this. And, of course, please keep our persecuted Christian brothers and sisters in your prayers as well. Sarah Bassil, thank you so much, as always.
Thank you for having me, Annie.
Absolutely.